Friends, good morning. Journalism School friends, family, alumni, honored guests. There's so many great conversations going on in this room. I hate to stop it, but we've got a great program lined up for you, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Speed Hallman. I'm Associate Dean for Development and Alumni in the J School. Professor John Sweeney, who is listed on your program, has fallen ill to the bug that has swept through Carroll Hall this week and was unable to be here this morning, so I'm pitching in for him. And I also bring you greetings from our Dean, Susan King, who is traveling internationally this week on business. She sends her regards and also her thanks to you for joining us this morning. But we're delighted to have y'all for the second annual Journalism School Homecoming Brunch featuring leading figures from sports, communication, and journalism. I want to recognize a few special guests. Jessica Skipper is with us this morning. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Several board members. Susan Ross is a member of our foundation board. She's here with her mother, Lois Cranford. Susan and Lois are both graduates of our school, and Susan's daughter is a graduate, so they have 3 generations of journalism school graduates in that family, which is spectacular. And Lois is a docent in our Kuralt Center in Carroll Hall, and we just love having her. She adds so much to the life of the school in that role. Janet Northern is a member of our Board of Advisors. Janet, thank you for being here. Bill Keys is a member of our Foundation Board and our Board of Advisors. He does double duty. And if you haven't had a chance to meet Bill, I think you can catch him at the Bojangles in Henderson this afternoon. He tells me it's the last stop for sweet tea on his way back to Washington, D.C. And he never misses that opportunity for a fix. Delighted to have Bubba Cunningham, Athletic Director at the University of North Carolina. Thank you, Bubba, for being with us. Clarence Whitefield is a 1944 graduate of the Journalism School, former Director of the General Alumni Association. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention an alum who is not here, Ann Sawyer Cleland, a member of the class of 1950 from Irvine, California. Got the invitation to this event, couldn't attend but wanted to sponsor students, wanted to buy tickets for students from the school to attend this morning, and so she was very generous in doing that. So would the students in the journalism school please stand? Thank you all. Thank you so much. And lastly, Mr. Cyrus Aman, a 1934 graduate of the University of North Carolina from Richmond, Virginia. But wait, there's more. He's here with his daughter and son-in-law, Jane and Bill Lepus, and also Brad Schaefer, my development colleague from the Keener Flagler Business School. There are 2 things that you need to know about Mr. Aman. He is Charles Kuralt's cousin, and he will be 100 years old on December 2nd. Thank you, Mr. Aman, for being with us. Great to have all of y'all here this morning. Now, in the journalism school, I was taught to avoid cliches, but I'm going to go to cliche this morning because I'm introducing a man who literally needs no introduction. We all know Woody Durham. Even if we've never met him, his voice has been in our homes, in our cars, and he's like a member of the family. And like a trusted member of the family, we knew he would be at the appointed place, at the appointed time, ready to go to work and prepared to describe the contest that was unfolding in front of him. We learned about the game from him, and we also learned about the players. He knew them as individuals, and he would tell us about them. I always loved the way he would add a player's hometown when he was mentioning that name. When I see the name of a city like Carlisle, Pennsylvania, for instance, Jeff Levo, you know, those connections are just engraved. I met Woody in the fall of 1980. I was standing on Raleigh Street watching the Beat Duke parade, and Woody came riding by in a Jeep. and the parade stopped right in front of me. So as a brash, young, long-haired college student, I walked up to him and asked him for his autograph. And I babbled something about being a fan and turning down the sound on the TV and turning up the radio sound. And he was very patient and generous and kind, gave me his autograph, and I'm sure he was relieved when the parade started again and he was able to be on his way. But I saw that attitude on his part time and time again in hotel lobbies and on Franklin Street, and anywhere he goes, people want to talk to Woody about what he means to them. And he's never changed. He always has time for whoever wants to talk with him. Woody is a 1963 graduate of the Department of Radio, Television, and Motion Pictures. The J School absorbed the radio and TV functions of that department in the 1990s, so we count Woody as our own. He was the voice of the Tar Heels for 40 years, from 1971 to 2011, and he broadcast more than 1,800 UNC football and basketball games. Woody brought those contests to life for those of us who couldn't be there, and even those of us who were there and wearing headphones, so we could get his take on the game. Reading a list of his awards and honors would take us until dinner time, so I'll just commend you to his new book entitled Woody Durham, A Tar Heel Voice, published in September by John F. Blair. Please welcome Woody Durham.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning to each and every one of you. It's a pleasure to be with you on this day, and I'm not only honored to be with you, but I thank Speed for those nice comments during the introduction. I'll be honest with you. This has been a busy week, and a week during which I felt like I hit the journalism cycle over the last 4 days. Thursday morning at 8, former Dean Richard Cole invited me to come and be a part of his interview class, which I was glad to do. And for 75 minutes, the students peppered me with questions about the in and outs of my broadcasting career, which, as Speed told you a moment ago, has stretched from my first radio job when I was a high school junior in Albemarle for some 55 years. Now, Jean and I got to accept, and I'm sorry my wife can't be here today because she's on the mend from some left knee replacement surgery in early August, which she had a few complications, and then she tried to do too much and she stressed a tendon, so Dr. Scott Kelly, who did the surgery, has told her to take it easy now for about 4 weeks and that tendon should be fine. But I don't know whether she's moaning today over that stretched tendon, which didn't hold up very well yesterday, or whether she's moaning over the outcome in Kenan Stadium yesterday. But now I have the invitation to have brunch with you. And I have the distinct pleasure also today in hitting for the cycle of introducing a UNC alumnus who has been a key architect in the explosive growth enjoyed by ESPN. I just wished our Tar Heels felt as good today as I do, what with another tussle coming up on Thursday night at Virginia. And Bubba, it seems to be that the Cavaliers have found what they wanted to find. So that'll be a tough assignment in Charlottesville on Thursday night. I also hope that our basketball Tar Heels will feel better at the end of this day when they take the next step toward next week's Maui Invitational. When I accepted this invitation, it was suggested that I might talk about my book, A Tar Heel Voice, which with the help of Adam Lucas was released in early September. Or better yet, Kyle York, who was nice enough to extend my original invitation, when I accepted the invitation, suggested I might share a story about something that happened during my Carolina broadcast career. Considering the presence of today's special guest, I thought a story, certainly a basketball story about the Tar Heels on television, and I think it was ESPN, John, might be the best, especially since it sheds light on a young man who went on to become, in the minds of a lot of people, the greatest player to ever play the game of basketball, and also about a head coach who was truly a quality person. I want to take you back to 1984, Cole Fieldhouse in College Park, Maryland. The game has already been decided in Carolina's favor. It's late in the game against Maryland. Coach Smith has taken some of the starters out, and put some of the reserves on the floor. But he has left a player on the floor by the name of Michael Jordan. Late in the game, Carolina deflects a Maryland pass, steals the ball, and the ball is thrown ahead to Michael. Well, Michael's going down the right sideline toward the Carolina basket, and when he did, he veered a little bit closer to the sideline. And as he did, and we're up at a higher level broadcasting the game, and we could see both benches. And as I looked down, I saw the entire Carolina bench, the players especially. The coaches didn't stand, but the players stood as one because they knew what was coming. And even today, you see it as part of ESPN promos about college basketball. 1984, Cole Fieldhouse, College Park, Maryland, was the first time that Michael Jordan showed the world the cuff windmill dunk. You've seen it. Remember, he comes in with a ball like this, and he takes it and goes by the basket and puts it in like that. Well, that's not the end of the story. The next day, we're back in Chapel Hill, and it's a Thursday, and we're preparing highlights of that game for Coach Smith's weekly television show, which we taped on Saturday nights. I'm in the tape room, and we're getting to that play, and suddenly somebody comes into the tape room and says, "Woody, the basketball office is on the telephone and needs to talk with you." So I excused myself, went out and picked up the phone. It was Linda Woods, Coach Smith's secretary. And we exchanged pleasantries over how good that win was the night before at Maryland. And she said, "Woody, Coach Smith needs to speak to you." So Coach Smith got on the phone, and I said, "Coach, congratulations," because he did not come back on the plane with us last night. I said, "Congratulations, that was a terrific win last night." He said, "I need for you to do me a favor." I said, "Coach, what's that?" He said, "I don't want you to show Michael's dunk." I said, "Coach, that dunk has been seen round the world. It's been on every American television network, and I'm sure it's been on some of the Far East networks and other points around the world." He said, "This is my television show, isn't it?" I said, "Yes, sir, it is." He said, "Don't show the dunk." I said, "Coach, can I ask you why?" He said, "Because I don't want Maryland to think we're rubbing it in." That typifies who he was as a person as well as a basketball coach, probably more than any other story I could share with you this morning. Our first introduction to our special guest today came this morning, but we both grew up as Tar Heels in small Piedmont towns. I was in Albemarle. He grew up in Lexington, North Carolina. He went on to obtain degrees in English literature from both Carolina and Columbia. And to this day, and he has this in the latest rendering of the Carolina Basketball Media Guide, he believes the UNC system is all about taking small town kids, giving them worldly exposure so they can contribute in their communities and wherever opportunities might lead them. His opportunities first led him into the publishing field after his master's degree, and all the way up the career ladder now to his selection 11 months ago as the president of ESPN and co-chairman of the Disney Networks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to Chapel Hill, John Skipper.
It's a great honor for me to be introduced by Woody Durham, who I feel like I've known my entire life. But of course, we just met this morning.
That's right.
And I did tell, and I'm not using the microphone because, oh my gosh, listen to this voice, following Woody Durham. If you'd had this voice, Woody, you would have had to find another job. But I got it, and I'd be more comfortable. I think you can hear me. You guys can hear me in the back, right? I'm generally not that hard to hear. So I think I'll stand here. But I told Woody this morning that we were not that far from knowing each other.
That's right.
Because for years, Woody had a couple of spotters named Harold Bowen and Whitey Smith from Lexington, North Carolina. And they drove to every home Carolina football game with a third guy, whose name was Darryl Skipper, who was my father. So you think I do need the microphone? Oh, for the camera, okay. Well, I'll stand back there. I don't want to mess up the camera. And now we've had a little distance between our voices, and I feel a little better. But the third guy in that car every Saturday was Darryl Skipper, who is the reason I came to Carolina ultimately because of the work he did. He was a mailman. I never had the opportunity to go to college. He and my mom, who sewed clothes for a living, did taxes that she wasn't supposed to do. She wasn't certified, but you could get Catherine Skipper to do your taxes for 50 bucks. And he painted. Made sure that I got an opportunity to go here, and it was a seminal event in my life, of course, because as Woody read that quote, that has been a lot about what my life was about, was coming here, getting that experience, becoming a different person, going out in the world and having an opportunity to succeed. So I feel very fortunate to have been here, and I feel very lucky to come back 34 years after I graduated and to be here with you guys, and to finally get a chance to meet to Woody Durham. My dad, of course, was the third guy in that car because he wanted to come see me. It was an opportunity, if you remember when your kids went to school, we got some current students, you know, they didn't always call home. No cell phones in those days. We were up here, so my dad came and wore a Carolina blue windbreaker, took people up and down to their seats because he wanted a chance to see me 5 or 6 times a year. And then my brother followed me here, and he stayed and did it for years after that. So I appreciate and I really cherish the connection, Woody, and it's a real honor to be introduced by you. So thank you. I want to share, before I talk about ESPN, I want to share 2 stories from this weekend. I have 2 hosts this weekend, and these are stories that speak to my pride as a Carolina graduate. My first host this weekend is Speed Hallman, and Speed actually had me in more classes on Friday than I was in my entire last semester. And I performed better in those classes than I did in my classes in my last semester here. And I had a wonderful day with a bunch of wonderful students, and some of those students are here. Will was in the last session. It was called Sports Extra. It's about 23, 24 students. Kiara was sitting right to my left from Charlotte, correct? Will, I think, is also from Charlotte. But then at the corner, down at the end, was Claudia and Javier, who were from Bogota, Colombia. By the way, they're from Bogota. They didn't know each other. Claudia says, I'm from Colombia. Javier's next door and says, well, me too. He says, I'm from Bogota. Me too. So Javier and Claudia from Colombia. We had a young man from Saint Etienne in France who was amazed that I knew that his team had beaten Paris Saint-Germain this past weekend. We had a young woman named Safé from outside of D.C. We had a young fellow who was his parents were first-generation Mexican-American. Was his name Mike? Yeah, it's a great Mexican named Mike. I tell you, I've very seldom been more proud of the university I go to than seeing that Carolina, through the journalism department, embraces the future, embraces the current diversity of our country and where it's at. And I felt a great moment of pride, which I told the students, I'm like, this is amazing. I was here in 1974, 5, 6, 7, had a spectacular experience, but to see that while we cherish the tradition that we have here at Carolina, we still have the kids that we were talking about, Woody, from around the state who get a different experience here. They were also embracing kids from Colombia, first-generation Mexican-American, a kid from France. A lot of people in this country don't want to embrace the Frenchman. But I'm happy to say we at Carolina were, and it was a spectacular moment of pride that we're about progress, we're about going forward, and that was spectacular. My second moment of pride comes during my hosting by the other gentleman, Bubba Cunningham, who had me at the game Friday night. Basketball game, had me at the football game yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer to me, even when I pointed out to him that Georgia Tech had just scored more points than Gardner-Webb. Was still very nice to me. I met Bubba's wife Tina. I met 3 of his 4 kids. I met his compliance officer, whose name I think was Vince. And I tell you why I'm proud here is because I felt after meeting Bubba, meeting his family, meeting his compliance officer, that we're in good hands here. And I know that the part of the pride I've carried with me as a Carolina graduate forever and for years is that we do it the right way at Carolina. And I feel very good that Bubba understands that and is going to do it the right way here and make sure we continue on that. So Bubba, thank you. Speed, thank you for the hosting this weekend, and thanks for those moments of pride. It's a great thing to be a Carolina graduate. ESPN, I'll give you just a few things about ESPN, and then on the program it actually says I'll take questions, so I don't want to ramble. And I'm one of the great ramblers of our time, as the students found out in class. ESPN, and I was not there. I arrived at ESPN in 1997. ESPN started in 1979, and the first words on the air of ESPN were by a gentleman named George Grand, who said, if you're a sports fan, you will think you have died and gone to heaven. And that was because ESPN was founded by sports fans, continues to be populated by sports fans, and has the philosophy and the mission that we are here to serve sports fans and to make it more possible for them to enjoy their fandom. And I do believe that ESPN managed to revolutionize the world of sports media and how you interact with sports. We had a few different generations here. So some folks here will remember when there was only one football game on a Saturday. You will remember they didn't show. It's shocking, I know, the first rounds of the NCAA basketball tournament. And you couldn't watch a volleyball game. And there were no women's sports on television. And ESPN thought at that time, honored fans, respected fans, and said, we're going to show everything. And that's what we want to do. We want to show everything. We've you know, Bubba and I've talked a little bit about sort of the goal of getting cameras on all the tennis courts and in the natatorium and getting all the games on, because every game has a fan, right? Whether it's a mom, a dad, an uncle, a friend, a dorm mate. We want to show all the games we can. Woody, we were sitting at the table and said maybe there's 10 ACC basketball games that won't be on television this year. That's an oversight. We're trying to figure that out. We'll do 1,550 basketball games this year across ESPN platforms. We will finish up this year doing about 450 football games. So what ESPN said was, you're gonna be able to watch sports 24/7 on wherever you want to watch them, and that revolutionized the world where the networks showed you sports on Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. And ESPN said, we'll show them all the time. We further said we're going to show them live, and the backbone of our business now is live sports. We want to show everything live. And what we've done is try to aggregate a portfolio of sports rights across a lot of sports where we can show you things live. Right now, across all of media, the most valuable content in all of media right now is sports. And the reason that's so is that with DVR, time-shifting technology, and the dispersal of interest across lots of different things, there's less commonality of interest in lots of areas, music, unfortunately politics. And in sports there is commonality of interest. People gather around sports. I've been in lots and lots of rooms with one-way mirrors, and if you've been in the marketing business at all, these are focus groups, right, where you can see in, they can't see out. And I do know, by the way, if you put a group of women in a focus group, they find things to talk about. You put a group of men in a focus group, they have no idea what to say to each other. They are unbelievably awkward, and at some point you're watching them on the other side of the mirror, and you can guess what one of them finally says. Hey, did you see the game last night? And then suddenly they'll talk to each other. Before that, they won't talk to each other. And so it's what people talk about in sports, and we try to fulfill that, mission. The other thing we care a lot about at ESPN that has manifested itself in our business is we want to be a leader in share among all platforms. And it is really one of our advantages as a sports media company. We hold right now about a 50% share of sports media across everything that happens in national sports. In national news and information, we have a 65% share. In information you get off of a mobile device, we have about a 60% share. In sports that you read on a piece of paper nationally, we have about a 40% share. The internet, about a 32% share. And while we have lots of competitors, there are league networks, there's Fox, there's CBS, there's NBC, there's Yahoo Sports, there's Sports Illustrated, there's the local paper. There's no company, and again, this mostly happened before I got there. I happen to be the fortunate beneficiary of it. There's no company that has leading share platforms across old media, print, broadcast television, cable television, new media, applications, mobile devices, internet sites as ESPN, and our goal is to be everywhere. Sports fans want to be. We're not satisfied like Yahoo Sports to be on the internet and not be other places. We're fortunate that the broadcast networks for years were satisfied to be broadcast sports companies and didn't think the cable 24/7 made much sense. They were making a lot more money than ESPN in 1979 and 80 and 81 and 82, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 92, 3, 4, 5, and suddenly it shifted the other way. And there was a lot more commerce in serving sports fans 24/7 and serving them on the internet. When the internet started, famously, one of the most important sports figures of all time, revered, I won't tell you his name, but lots of you would know his name, said, "I have no intention of trading an analog dollar for a digital dime," by which he meant, television works great for me. I'm making a lot of money, and I'm not going to put sports on the internet because I'm not going to be able to make as much money. That, by the way, is exactly the way to lose your franchise and your business, is to ignore what comes next and allow yourself to get flanked by new technology and new media. And they allowed themselves to get flanked by ESPN. We have no intention of allowing that, so that every new technology, the media that comes along, our philosophy is we're going to adopt that technology. We're going to create product on that technology. The Microsoft Surface device came out about 2 weeks ago, and if you bought one of those devices, embedded on it was an ESPN application. So if you downloaded that ESPN application, you would get your scores, your video, your news. By the way, it links to our networks, so you can use the device to cut your television on and watch our networks. It links to our ESPN.com website, because we're now there, and we're there first. We don't know how we'll make money on that right now, but if we get share, over time we will figure out how to make money there. So our intention is to continue to look like this, from old media to new media, to have share across all those platforms, let other people compete with us in individual segments, but then to keep doing this so that we don't allow ourselves to be flanked. IBM at one point was the most important computer company. They made mainframe computers, and that was where all the money was. And when these knuckleheads in garages in Silicon Valley came out with these computers that could sit on your desk, they're like, there's no money in that. And they lost their business because they thought there was no money in that. There is no money in new things often immediately, but if people like them, we call our customers fans. If fans like the Surface, if they like the Android device, if they want to watch games on their computer, our intention is to be there with them. And it is a phenomenon. I don't know if you've heard, we introduced about 18 months ago something called Watch ESPN. It's sometimes referred to as TV everywhere. And that has to do with the convergence of technology, which is really about screens. It's about the fact that the screen in your living room, which is an HD 70-inch Samsung device, and the internet, the desktop computer in your office, and the tablet on your table, and the mobile device in your pocket are just screens. And what we want to do is populate all those screens with video, and the same video. If you happen to be sitting in a room like this, if there was a good game being played right now, you wouldn't have to listen to me. You could pretend to be listening to me, and you could get your device out and you could watch the game right here, which you'll increasingly see people do. We have more than 1 million people on a college football Saturday watch a game on a device other than a television because they care, and they got to rake leaves, or they got to go to their in-laws for dinner, or they got to go do something that takes them away from what they'd rather be doing. Bill, are you back there looking at a game? Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So thank you for proving my point, and it doesn't offend me if you don't listen. Anyway, so that's kind of what our business is about. I won't ramble on too much longer. I'm very proud to work at ESPN. The people there really care. Our offices are in Bristol, Connecticut. You're Michael, right? No. What was your name? Johnny. That's right. You were on the left yesterday. My left. Yes. Nice to see you. He was in the meeting also. The people who work at ESPN are very proud to be there. We have about 7,500 employees. We have another 5,000 people who make their living off of ESPN, either being contract talent, writer, freelance camera person. And I think to a person, you'll find people are proud to be at ESPN. We're proud of our accomplishments. We have a saying within our company that we take sports seriously, we take our fans seriously, we do not take ourselves seriously. You see why? After all, I'm in charge. I go around the company, and when I see people and shake their hands, I say, I'm just as surprised as you are that I'm still president. But we had a wonderful year. I've been there. I've been doing this now 11 months. It's a great privilege to lead a company like this. My intention is to continue to grow it, to continue to serve fans. We have lots of growth opportunities in mobile and Latin America, around the rest of the world, showing other games, other sports, women's sports. We think it's a big opportunity, and there's no good stopping place. So why don't I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has about the company, about sports media in general, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. You guys got to be asked, you have to be questioned out from yesterday. People were in that room yesterday. You're going to ask another question?
Do you get time to when you do a 24/7? Like I'm going to do that night, like Latin novels.
So Kiara's asking if I ever get tired of sports. I don't get tired of sports. You get tired of the job. It's a fabulous job, and everything I do is fun. I meet great people, and I'm at games. And I tell my wife I'm working. She says, "You're at a game." I'm like, "I'm working, I promise." And there is a paycheck that does come associated with that. But so you never get tired of it, but it does. There's a wear and tear factor, and I still read lots of books. I still read a couple of books every week, mostly because I'm on planes a lot. So I recommend a great book called The Orchardist by a first-time writer named Amanda Copeland, who was in the writing program in the University of Washington. It's her first book, and it is spectacular. A spectacular writer. I'd be happy to, I know you don't need to recommend more books, so I won't do that. But to answer your question, you can't really get tired of the job. The job is fabulous. Again, you can get worn out, but it's not because of the job. It's just, it never stops, right? It's 24/7. Remember there was the movie where they talked about ESPN, the Ocho, and it was like a big joke? We have 8 networks now. So we have 8 networks. So we're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Last year we did 10,000 live hours of games. So we did 16,000 hours of live studio programming. You add those two together, it's over 3 hours of live programming every hour, in addition to tape programming and 30 for 30 and re-airs. So as I frequently tell people, if I worked all the time, I'm getting behind at every moment in time. You just can't watch everything. My least favorite moments are when people come down the hall to ESPN and say, "Hey, did you see that feature I did last week on the overnight sports center?" I'm like, "Well, no." I actually did have to sleep at some point. But it's a tough moment because people take such pride in what they do. And it is a place that runs. Susan.
So you didn't have a linear direction from journalism school through progressive media things. How do you at ESPN make a place for other people like you who are going to bing through a career?
Well, could you hear that it's about career progression, and obviously mine was unusual. I was a literature major here. I wasn't particularly directed and knew exactly what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be in book publishing. I wanted to be Maxwell Perkins, who was the editor of the great North Carolina writer Thomas Wolfe. I went and did work in the magazine publishing business for about 11 years. I had the great fortune to work for people who were willing to take advantage of me and move me around. I did, in talking to the class yesterday, I hate being asked, what would you recommend? Because there is no recommendation, right? Everybody's path is different. It requires a certain amount of good fortune. It requires hard work. It requires lots of just being serendipity, being in the right place at the right time that something comes up. On the other hand, you can make some path. You just don't know what it will be by working hard and working for smart people and figuring out things to do. I've tried to inculcate in the culture at ESPN, let's hire people with unusual backgrounds. Let's hire people who haven't done exactly what the job would suggest. We used to have a progression through the company that started with what was called a production assistant. And then you became an assistant producer. And you became an associate producer. And you became a producer and then a senior producer. then a senior coordinating producer. And I've tried to say you don't have to have this ladder where you have to go up and down at the company. You can bring people in, and I have a thing that people at work get tired of hearing me saying, which is if you have to choose between brains and experience, choose brains, because you cannot get more. You can get more experience. You cannot get more brains, last time I checked. I know modern science is a wonderful thing, but so far you can't get more brains. So we do try to do that. It's also been important in our company. Again, one reason I was proud at that class is we have, in the last few years, tried to diversify our company. And with some level of success, but you cannot diversify a company if you're not willing to insert people into the middle of career progressions. I have people tell me all the time, gee, what we have to do is we have to create a stock pool of talent and eventually they will move up through the company. Well, that doesn't work. That takes 30 and 40 years, and that's not how you're going to change things in a hurry. So we do that. I will tell you, we've had progress. So I've told this, the report on diversity in journalism is done by a professor out of Central Florida whose name is Richard Lapchick, who is one of the great courageous leaders of diversity in this country. Was once beaten to within a fair point of being hospitalized and in danger of his life for being a pioneer in diversity in the South back in the 70s and 80s. And he does a report, talks about diversity in media. There are 27 national sports writers who are women right now. Now, I met more than 27 women in the journalism school who are capable of being national sports writers. 19 of them work for ESPN. There are 32 African American national sports writers. 23 of them work for ESPN. So while I am very proud of what we're doing, on the other hand, we have a lot more than 32 sports writers, so we can do better. And other people need to do better. National newspapers in this country.
What's the number that comes out, the 23 women? What's that? How many men are there?
Men at ESPN?
National sports writers.
Oh, I do not know. It's probably 500. It's less than 5%. Less than 5%. I'm sorry. I know you had. Did you have your hand up?
No, I was just going to ask, what year do you believe that the Super Bowl will move from broadcast television to cable television?
You know, it's about when the Super Bowl. Almost everything has moved from broadcast to cable, and ESPN has forced the issue. I'll tell you a slight story out of school. We're in school, actually. Can't be out of school, right? So we were negotiating for the BCS in 2008, I think it was. BCS had started at ABC, was on ABC television, had moved to Fox. They'd gotten it from us, and we were negotiating for it at ESPN. And the fella, by the way, the fellow who works at IMG, who's the woman who had an internship at IMG? Sarah. Barry Frank. You ever run into Barry Frank? Good guy, very old school guy. So Barry Frank said to me, we won't sell it to ESPN because this deserved. Have you heard this story? Okay. So he said, we won't sell it to you at ESPN because it belongs on broadcast. I said, okay, I understand that. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pay you $125 million a year for ABC, and we're the high bidder at $125 million, and I'll pay you $150 million a year to put it on ESPN. And you know the outcome. We put it on ESPN. So there's no real big differential between broadcast and cable. If you look at who watches sports, 95% of the people who watch sports watch it, have cable, have pay television. Now that does mean 5% of the people are disenfranchised, but in my opinion, and it is self-serving of course, self-motivated, we provide so much more sports and our success has created so much more opportunity for people to watch that the greater good it has been created through pay television. So that's the story. That Super Bowl, they wouldn't move it in the last, and there wasn't enough money because to move the Super Bowl, and we didn't really care that much about it. I wasn't willing to pay a lot of money I do care about it, but I wasn't willing to pay enough money to move it. Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner, said we won't move it. It's going to be on cable television. It's the only thing right now that wouldn't have been sold. We just finished baseball negotiations. If we'd been willing to pay, the World Series would have moved to pay television this time. And so that was sort of the next to the last thing. So anything can be on cable television. Yes, it was John, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, you just mentioned, I was going to just say, you worry about two things. One of them is for all of football, which goes all the way from the NFL down to Pee Wee, which is concussions. Concussions are a very significant issue right now. I think the people in charge are trying to come to terms with it. They're wrestling with the balance that they've got an awful lot of commerce and interest to protect. Remember, the commissioner of the NFL works for 32 owners. That's who he works for. And so while he can have exactly the right interest relative to safety, he still at some point sits in a room with 32 guys who say, here's what we want you to do. So yeah, worry about concussions. You got to get around that. I mean, there's already evidence that people who, parents are concerned about their kids playing football. And we all have to be concerned about sitting in stadiums and watching guys with the kind of hits they have and understanding what it could mean for the rest of their lives. So yeah, we're concerned about that. The second is the overall influence, and this is just college. I'm not worried about corrupting the NFL. It's just, they're professionals. I mean, they play football for a living. You do worry about the intersection of money and commerce, and we are a corrupting influence. The money is a corrupting influence. That doesn't mean we're corrupt or we're doing anything unethical, but when we do these big contracts, we are injecting a lot of money, and in any business, it's not college sports. I mean, you put a lot of money in the oil and gas business, and some people do some things wrong. You put a lot of money, you know, in anything, that some number of people will decide that getting that money is worth doing something unethical and inappropriate. So our doing a contract for a lot of money is not in itself an inappropriate act. In fact, the colleges can use that money for anything they'd like to. They could endow, you know, they could endow chairs in the youth orchestra with that money. We don't have any say in what happens to the money. What has happened, of course, is it's created an arms race at colleges to try to keep up, to build bigger stadiums. Now, there are beneficiaries of this, right? And those beneficiaries include the 3 million women who now play high school sports and the 350,000 women who now play college sports because of Title IX and because that money can fund rowing crew programs and women's volleyball programs. So there's lots of beneficiaries, and there are lots of schools. You heard me talk about my pride and hope that includes North Carolina, that do it right, that take that money and build facilities, and that understand that sound mind, sound body is a pretty good principle, right? Playing sports is a good thing. It is the most, if you correlate among young women playing sports, it is the single best thing they can do for self-esteem, confidence, success in life, and having a longer educational career. They're all correlated exactly. So these things are all good, and what we need is ethical people who will take that money and not abuse it and treat it appropriately. But do we worry about it? Yeah, I work with Mark Emmert, who's the president of the NCAA. We encourage all the people we work with to try to keep it in perspective. And again, understanding that we create some of the issues. We then ask teams to play on Thursday night. We ask teams to play on Friday night and disrupt class. So we try to balance that, and that's kind of, so it's not a definitive answer, right? We want to be on the side of right and the angels here, and we try to be, and I think generally are. I mean, you will see, we also are by far the largest sports news and information business, and almost anything that gets exposed in college sports or professional sports at this point comes from ESPN. I mean, we have a funny thing, right, where we're in a relationship with all the leagues. We're also aggressively reporting on all the leagues, including uncovering what the same people we're doing business with do that they shouldn't do. And I think anybody who suggests we don't do that aggressively is just mistaken. We're frequently accused of that, which is having that conflict. But when I ask the question if anybody can discover a single incident in which we didn't, where we pulled up or where we changed the story, and it's never happened that any ex-employee, any league official, nobody has ever come forward and said, yes, they did change one thing. We've never changed a single thing in a feature, a story, an online report based on our business relationship. Sorry, I know it was a little bit of a speech. Sorry. Sure. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. She's asking about the NHL lockout, which the NHL is the only significant sports organization that we don't have their games in this country. But despite that, most of the news and information that people get about hockey comes through ESPN. So we don't like it. I occasionally get people who say, "Oh, you must be thrilled that your friends at NBC own the hockey league and run the rights to the games, and they're not playing." And I'm like, no, because for sports fans, it's a bad thing that the players aren't playing. It creates, I guess the other thing, John, you could say you worry about is the disconnect sometimes between fans and the money, and how fans, resent players making so much money. And this puts it into highlight, right? It's billionaire owners and millionaire players, and that makes nobody happy. So no, we're unhappy about it. I wish they would settle. No, not really. Not really, because they will settle, so we wouldn't, no, it wouldn't affect really sports writers of those jobs. Yeah, they're busy writing about the lockout. I'll try to do a few things quickly. Yes? It's a funny thing. We have never been able to find a saturation point, right? Fans who like sports want more, and what they want is more of what they want, right? They want more. Right now, all 300 teams who play Division I basketball, they want all their games to be on. They don't have big audiences, but to the extent we can satisfy them, we have a broadband network called ESPN3 where we can put an infinite number of games on. We have never found a saturation point overall. Now, we find saturation points on stories. People, I think, are saturated with Tim Tebow. I think they've seen enough of Tim Tebow, and we're trying to do a little bit less of it. So we're worried about stories, but not overall saturation. Helen.
In your mind, what does it take to be so successful across so many platforms when there are so many other things to do?
Yeah, the question is about how we're so successful despite all the other. I tell you, it's the appeal of sports, right? The appeal of sports is human drama. It's watching people, great accomplishment, people who are dedicated. There's an endless number of stories. I'm so happy I'm not involved in reality television. It's my least favorite genre. I mean, when people are chopped off cooking shows and sent off the island, I mean, it's a world based on shame and embarrassment. And I'm so happy not to be in it. On the other hand, we engage in the noblest form of reality, which is human drama, right? Which are people who have moments that you can't explain, who overcome unbelievable odds and actually get to play. We did a wonderful story. I mentioned it to somebody the other day. I think in that class, was there a woman from Brevard? Or was that a different class? A different class. A young woman from Brevard, and I was reminded of this spectacular story we did of a young girl who had a scholarship to attend Brevard College here in North Carolina on a soccer scholarship. In her senior year, she had a horrific automobile accident and lost her leg. And the coach at Brevard said, "You know what, your scholarship is still good with me. Come on in and you're on the team and play." She was fitted with a prosthetic leg and of course can't play at the level she needs to play, but despite that, she's been on the team and they put her in games. She's a goalkeeper. Has anybody seen the story? I see a couple of heads nodding here. It's just, I defy you to watch it and not cry. It is such a beautiful story, and that is ultimately the appeal of sports, right? There's plenty of tawdry stuff. There's plenty of guys who lose all their money, get 70 million contract, lose their money. But for every one of those, there's 6 or 7 people for whom they've created a better life for themselves. They've done something wonderful and noble. And that's ultimately, I think, is the appeal of sports and why I don't worry about it being saturated. And I feel very fortunate to be working what I'm working in. Yes. I'll hustle.
I believe it's ABC, but Sunday morning, you have the little shows, and the pundits talk, and then at the end, the anchor asks the people, tell us something you don't know. Tell us something you don't know.
Wow. Well, that's a fabulous question. And it leaves me, I don't know, the thing that you don't know is just, I think that most people don't know is how messy it all is, right? when it's on the air, and I expect actually some people here in the journalism school will have a acute understanding of this. SportsCenter, we do SportsCenter 20 hours a day now, live. And I would defy you if you watched any of it. It looks like it is beautifully scripted. It looks like everybody knows what they're doing. If you were behind the scenes, the number of times that somebody is running to get back in a chair before the commercial break, the number of times that when they go to commercial break, the anchor goes, "You've got to be kidding me." You know, I've never seen that highlight before. Who put that up? And why didn't I know that before? It's hard. And so I think the thing you don't see, we want to make it easy. Again, you guys are training people so that what they do behind the scenes, I'm sure you have your stories of craziness behind the scenes, but I am proud of the fact that it looks beautiful for the most part. It looks seamless. It looks like it's going great. There's a lot of mess behind the scenes, and the extent we can keep that off, we'd like to. You guys, it's really been a privilege and a pleasure. I was reminded, by the way, that I've come up here and there's Woody, Speed, Bubba. I feel like I'm like in a Jeff Bridges movie. Woody, Speed, and Bubba have been my host and my introducers. So thank you guys very much for the weekend. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate being here. Thank you.
I'm sure that Woody and Bubba will join Speed in saying that, Skip, we really enjoyed having you this morning. And we have not reached our saturation point yet, but we know that you have to get to the airport and catch an airplane. But we appreciate you spending time with us, sharing your perspectives with us this morning, and especially the time that you've spent with our students. You're very generous, and you always answer the call, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. You're representing Carolina at the highest levels of the business and doing wonderfully well. We're proud of you. We want you to have a little bit of Carolina blue.
All right, I got a little Carolina blue. Thank you.
To take with you. Thanks again. Thanks to all of you for coming. One final note. Chancellor Robert House used to approach the lectern when he was making a speech, and he would say, "I brought my notes." And he would pull out, not a speech, but a harmonica, and play several songs for the crowd. Clarence Whitefield, would you please come forward? This is a tradition that we started last year with our first homecoming brunch. Clarence, longtime director of the General Alumni Association, a legend on this campus, a great friend of the school, great alumnus of our school. Take it away.
I confess that I spent 14 years after graduating from from a journalism school here. I went back over to my hometown of Durham, worked for the Durham Morning Herald for about 8 or 10 years until a better paying job came along. Newspapers are notorious for not paying well unless you own them. I didn't own anything in the Durham Morning Herald. But anyway, a better paying job came along, and for 14 years I was PR director at Duke University. Thought I was going to spend my whole career over there until 5 or 6 guys showed up in my office over there one day in one of those nice stone houses over there near the chapel, unannounced. I said, "What in the world is all this?" They said, "You've been over in this enemy camp long enough. We need you back in Chapel Hill." I accepted that invitation to come back here as alumni director, and I didn't play a harmonica at Duke. I just didn't have an occasion for it. But anyway, Bob House, our first chancellor over here, always introduced his speech with these kind of notes, not the written account. And he played Old Susanna, Alabama Gal, Won't You Come Out Tonight, Peekaboo Waltz, some of those songs. Finally, I've been in the job for long enough, I didn't want them to think I was just a Bob House imitator. I was out of town somewhere and playing, and I said, "I like those kind of tunes all right, but I said, I think maybe y'all might appreciate these kind of tunes a little better."